So as part of those relationships, in April of 2025, the state of Florida joined with the Department of Homeland Security to establish Operation Tidal Wave. And it was state efforts to be a force multiplier to assist with the identification, apprehension, and then the feds would return the illegal aliens back to their home country. So today, I can announce that Operation Tidal Wave is now hit over 10,000 arrests of illegal aliens who have been turned over to the Department of Homeland Security. Of those, 63% had criminal arrests or convictions, including violent offenders and sex offenders, although you don't have to have committed a crime to be subject to immigration enforcement. If you've come illegally, that is the offense. And so, of course, people can enforce the law. But it does show that some of these folks have been involved in a lot of really, really bad stuff. So there's no other state that has been able to do anything approaching what the state of Florida has been able to do. And Operation Tidal Wave's over 10,000. But then if you look at the other efforts of the counties combined, we're close to 20,000 arrests that have occurred just in the last year, and actually less than the last year, because the Trump administration didn't come in until January 20th. We didn't get our legislation passed until sometime in February because the initial one was not a good legislation. So we insisted on good. We got that, I think, in February, and then we had to spin up the 287G and do that. So there was a little bit of things that we had to do to get us there. So those are really, really big numbers. And there's not another state in the country that is even close in terms of this level of participation. So we've led. It's been very effective. This Deportation Depot, they have flights going out. They've had a bunch of flights. They have flights going out of Alligator Alcatraz. The tempo has picked up. We now, at each one of those facilities, the federal government has stationed an immigration judge at both Baker and those in Alligator Alcatraz. Now, these aren't Article 3 judges. They're not real judges. They're executive branch employees whose function is to serve to adjudicate immigration claims. Now, the problem that the federal government has is a lot of these people have been told come across the border illegally, then claim asylum. So these are, 90-some% are bogus asylum claims, and that attaches a certain amount of process. Congress should really clean that up. I don't know why Congress would allow that to be abused the way it's been abused, but it's been abused very, very badly. So they have this. They got to navigate this. So you now have one here. You have one in South Florida, and that's been able to speed up the process. And our goal is, we want people here as little as possible. And the goal is not to create a long-term facility, and that's not the function. The function is they don't have enough bed space at DHS in Florida. And honestly, they have very little in Florida compared to other states. It's pretty incredible per capita how little. And I know they're trying to expand it. But our function is, rather than release folks on the street, that will have an ability, they can be processed, and then the law can be enforced. And we're going to continue to be supportive of that. Now, I also hope that eventually we won't need a deportation depot, right? Because, if the feds could handle this by themselves and they had enough space to do it, then fine, we'll still help. But I would love for them to have more space to be able to do it. But what we've done has been effective. What we've done has made a big impact. And if other states were doing even a fraction of what Florida was doing, the national efforts would be all that much more stronger. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved. Now, we have our cabinet here, and they put something in the legislation to create this immigration board. You're going to hear from Anthony. And I didn't think it was necessary, and I don't think it's necessary. But I think the reason they did it is because they wanted there to be someone in cabinet could throw sand in the gears maybe and make it more difficult. And nothing has been further from the truth. Everybody on the cabinet has worked very hard to make sure that Florida was leading the way on this. And I'm proud that we've been able to do that. We've got folks that are now overseeing there. we had Larry Keefe, who did a really good job. We have Kevin with Department of Emergency Management helping with the logistics. FDLE and Highway Patrol have done great work on this, both in tidal wave and then also in other parts of that. I mean, just think about it. You're on the highway. You have somebody that's here illegally, doesn't have a valid license, because you don't get a license in Florida if you're here illegally. You're not eligible. Doesn't have license, doesn't have insurance, and is out there driving drunk. To just put them back on the street like Biden was doing, how is that keeping the people of Florida safe? So now Highway Patrol, they're working like clockwork to be able to make sure that we have accountability there. So they've done a really good job. We also have had people, even in like more non-law enforcement agencies, like the Department of Lottery, they have 287G agreements. I mean, it's pretty incredible that we've really gone that extensive and that deep. We also have a number of sheriffs throughout the state. Now, all 67 counties have 287G agreements. I would say the zealousness in enforcement is not uniform across 67 counties. And I know the Attorney General monitors that. And if he's able to identify where people are breaching duties, that could end up on my desk, and that could require some action or give me the ability to do some action. But we've had some that have done a really, really good job, and so I want to recognize them. Same thing with the police departments. We've had some that have done really well. We have some that are not violating the law, but they're not doing as much as they should be doing, and that's just a question of really political leadership. You have some people that get elected and they know they can't cross the line and frustrate, so they know they have certain duties, and so they try to do that as minimal as possible. We're watching all this. We're watching politicians say they're going to tear up 287G agreements. They're not going to cooperate. Well, you have the freedom to make those judgments, but we also have the responsibility to make sure that the law's enforced. But we have had great support from local overall for both the county and the city level, and that's why you see the numbers that you see today. So, there's so many times that people do different things. You'll see these politicians in Washington all the time, the congressmen, they'll put out press releases, but nothing ever happens, right? And so, we fought hard on this. It was obviously a salient issue in the 2024 election because our border was wide open. And you saw a lot of problems, and, Cayenne can speak from experience, having lost a son to an illegal alien crime, and this really does impact a lot of people's communities. So it was a pressing issue, but at the same time, it's like, okay, make us stink about it, talk about it, and then what? Nothing gets done. That's not how we roll here in Florida. When we set out to do something, we're going to make sure that we're going to be able to deliver results on that. And so these are great results. I think they're going to get even better going forward because I think DHS is in a better posture. And I think that they have more resources now, and I think it's going to be more effective. Final thing I'll say is, these numbers are what they are. This does not include, if the federal government is just doing something on their own since they have primary responsibility, we're not including that in these numbers. And so they've obviously done things on their own. We're also not including self-deportations. And we know just from the Florida's program where you can get a plane ticket, we've had about 1,000 people that have voluntarily returned for their home country. That's just through our program. I think it's more when you count people that did it on their own, way more, or in conjunction with the federal government. So there's a whole host of things that are going on here, but these are real metrics. This is real progress, and I think you're going to see the momentum continue going forward. So thanks to everybody who's going to be involved. All right, we're going to hear from some of the speakers. Okay, well, it's been great to see everyone work so hard at this. Seeing the results is really meaningful, and we've got good momentum. I think we're working very well with the federal government, and we're going to continue to put points on the board. I do want to just say, because I don't know if I'm going to be back up in Northeast Florida before the weekend, but, Jaguars had a great season. I mean, it was really impressive to see what happened. You know, I was thinking the Bucs, like, you know, they were like, started 5-6-1. They look really good. I mean, what a terrible second half. And I think the Jags are playing as good as anyone. It's been really exciting to see that turnaround. I know people up here are going to be very excited to see what happens in the playoffs. But I'll just tell you, I know there's a couple other teams that are better, but I wouldn't want to have to play them if I were one of these other teams. I think they're very dangerous. And then we also have on Thursday night one of our teams from Florida in the college semifinal. You know, we've never had a team in the entire state of Florida win a game in the college football playoff until Miami Hurricanes were able to win against Texas A&M, and then they beat Ohio State. So they're in a situation where if they win against Ole Miss, then they get a home game for the national championship at Hard Rock Stadium the following week. So, you know, that's pretty. That'd be pretty big for the state to be able to see. You know, it used to be the Florida schools would be in the top 5, even the 3 of them, certainly top 10 every year, and it's been a little bit thinner, I would say, in the last decade or so. And so Miami, you know, maybe they're the first one to kind of get back, and we'll see what happens with our state universities going forward. But should be fun over these next couple of weeks to watch some of these teams play. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes. Yeah, so look, DHS didn't have capacity. We've stepped in. It's obviously been a force multiplier. They've been able to do a lot more as a result of what we've done. But, you know, if they expand their own capacity, then that's going to be the first place they're going to turn to, right? Because, like, these are support. We don't choose who comes in. It's DHS chooses who gets sent to these places. So if they have their own places to do it, great. Like, you know, we're not trying to get, like, headlines in this. Like, it's fine. If they have what they need, then we won't have to do. But it's clearly temporary. How temporary will depend on the pace that they have in terms of doing the expansion, but obviously we would anticipate, you know, at some point they're going to up their own capacity. I know. I talked to Tom Homan; he wants to do that for sure. But you know, they're very thankful that we're doing what we're doing now. Okay, so I think we're going to end up doing. I think we're going to call it a Panhandle Pokey in Northwest Florida. So that's being done. We can go live on that probably relatively soon, right, Kevin? Yeah. So it's basically, you know, we do this, DHS approves it, and then they obviously reimburse it. This has been waiting, I guess, at the DHS leadership level for approval. So if they approve, we'll open. If they don't, then obviously, you know, we'll stand by, and that's fine. I think it should be approved because I don't think that they're where they need to be on deep detention space. But you know, we're happy to go either way. So that is ready. We also have another option potentially in southern Florida that would kind of be the same thing. DHS have to approve. But, you know, we want to use some of the good thing about this facility is that this required very little to get it ready, right? You know, Alligator Alcatraz, you had the airstrip, which is, you know, saved a lot of time to be able to fly right out. But, you know, you had to build temporary stuff there, which was fine. But when you start talking about a brick and mortar facility, if you have to go in and put a lot of work because it's been mothballed, that could be expensive. And we're not really looking to do that, right? I mean, you know, we're looking to help. We're getting reimbursed on this. I know there's a lot of people when I first said we're doing, how are you going to get? I was like, we're going to get reimbursed, and now they acknowledge that. And it also saves money for Florida because less money on health care for people showing up to the emergency room, less money in schools for people who aren't authorized to be here, but the Supreme Court says they have to be able to go, less money on law enforcement in terms of the costs that they have to put out to police stuff. So there's definitely savings for the state of Florida on that.
Governor,
what's that? We've got a number of options, so we're working through some of those. It's, you know, there's just different currents that you got to navigate, and we want to make sure we got something that makes sense. And even financially, even though we're getting reimbursed, you know, I still feel like we don't want to do something that is not going to make financial sense even to get a reimbursement for. And so if there's a facility that we got to, they say, yeah, you could have 1,500 beds here, but you got to put in $25 million or $50 million to get it ready. You know, I don't know that that's something, even if we got reimbursed, I'm not sure that that's something we would necessarily want to do. We like this because it was easy. We like the alligator because it's temporary stuff. That is not definitely a permanent facility. This is a permanent facility, even though it's not going to be permanent for this mission, but this is something that can be used for other things. So that's some of the things that we have to navigate.
Governor, with Deportation Depot, do we have any updated numbers on how many deportations, number of detainees, or any plans to expand or anything like that?
Where are we at on how many flights have come out of here?
So out of this facility, we've had 93 flights go out of this facility for roughly...
And we've been, what, 4 months?
4 months, yes, sir.
Yeah, so there's been 93 deportation flights. I mean, that's probably close to 1,000. 2,926. So, wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think Kevin has talked to some other states, but you know, the issue is it's easier said than done. We have, I mean, remember, emergency management. Our bread and butter is hurricane response, and we've worked very hard on that. And obviously, I don't think anyone would say that another state does that better than us. I mean, we do it good. It's not just us at the state. We've got a lot of good people in local do it. But that logistical know-how has been applied in other avenues. So remember, you guys remember a few years ago, you remember this, you had a Delta outbreak in Jacksonville for the coronavirus. And a lot of these people, honestly, had taken the mRNA shot, but they had it. And like the hospitals started getting all these people. So we did the monoclonal antibodies. No one was using them, really. I mean, they're very rare. And so I got all these monoclonals. And it was Kevin and his team. They would set up, and then we'd have our health people, and then we would do it. And we got a lot of people through in Jacksonville. And to this day, I will have people come up to me thanking me for that we had that, because it really did work to help it. So we've been able to do it in that. We've been able to do it in rescue missions. I mean, they just had the Jamaica hurricane. You know, we had people stranded, so we went and got them. We've got them from Israel, Haiti, all these other things. So that's kind of another wrinkle that we've added into that. So now we're now doing it in the processing and detention space to be able to assist DHS, and they're doing it really well. But, you know, the reality is not every state has that kind of capacity and know-how to be able to logistically make this stuff happen the way the state of Florida does. And, you know, it's Kevin, obviously, leading those logistical efforts, but then all of our agencies, just having dealt with emergencies and hurricanes and all this stuff, you know, they know how to get things done and do it. So I'm not going to name states, because then they say, oh, why did you talk to Florida and you didn't do it? I don't want to put anyone in hot water. But yes, people have asked what you're doing. I think that there's definitely a lot of capacity for some of these states to do more. Certainly in some like-minded states. And so we'll just have to see what they're able to do. So right. So the only for sure basis to do an immigration arrest is if the person does not have a right to be here, right? I mean, that's the threshold question. You know, if you have a criminal record but you're a U.S. citizen, you're not a part of immigration, right? So that's the threshold. And again, you don't have to have been convicted of a crime to be subject to immigration enforcement. To say that would be the case would be absurd. You're giving people a license to come in the country illegally until you commit a serious crime? No, we want to prevent the serious crimes from happening. But 63% of the tidal wave arrests already had either criminal arrest or convictions, and it's various crimes. You do have some violent. You have DUIs. You have gang. You have sex offense. Some are fugitives from justice. Others, another type of public safety threats. So the vast majority did have prior arrests or convictions with that. Now, it's like if they're convicted, they should have been removed. But, the reality was Biden wasn't really removing people. And even the ones that did get removed, I mean, the illegal with Cayenne's son had been deported and then came back and was able to twice. And so, it's just really, really, but the reality is it's just very important. The rule in the United States is not you can come on author illegally and you cannot be ever deported unless you commit a crime. If that were the case, a separate crime, then we would basically have no border. And so the immigration laws are what they are. They're being enforced, I think, by DHS in a way that the public has wanted to see for quite some time. And then us, we're facilitating that. But, the thing is, if Dave Kerner pulls someone over for speeding, not saying speeding's the equivalent to like a violent crime because, people speed, right? It's not something you necessarily, but sometimes they do. So pull over. And if the person doesn't speak English, doesn't have a driver's license, doesn't have insurance, well, his highway patrol, those troopers, they're going to probably think that there's reasonable suspicion that this person's not here illegally. So then they can act. And why would you want, if someone's speeding, to put them back out on the street, then they run into someone, and then they leave the scene? They don't have insurance. You're not going to get paid for all this stuff. So that's a high number, 63% that have criminal interactions, either arrest or convictions. But I don't think it's targeted just for that. I think our view is you have a right to be here or not. If I just showed up in France and just demanding all this stuff, they would laugh, right? You wouldn't be able to just go illegally and do it in almost any other country except the United States in recent years. And so I think the times they are a-changin', as someone once sang. I think they meant Canada, right? Who said that? Someone said that.
I was talking about our state of Florida northern border.
Okay, go ahead.
No. Yeah, so, what we have is we have interdiction stations at our northern border. And when you come through the northern border, if you're in a semi, a truck, trailer, anything of that nature, if you're hauling any type of food products, animal products, anything of that nature, you have to stop at those stations. We're building a station at 231 today, which comes in, I believe, through Alabama into the state of Florida. There's no interdiction station there, so it's very difficult for us to police that in the way that we would like to. There are at least 7 or 8 other arterial roads coming in from Georgia or through Alabama that's coming into the state that we do not have complete coverage on. We're working with our DOT partners to make sure that we're doing pullover lanes on those other areas. We're putting a permanent station in at 231. So by the end of this year, we fully expect to have full coverage of that northern border of the state of Florida coming into the state. The federal government handles the ports, so we will have a full blanket around the state, we hope, by the end of this year. And thanks to the legislature and the governor for giving us the resources to do that.
Well, thank you. This is important. It shows that us fighting for that. Blaze was in the legislature fighting for the legislation that's really let this come to fruition, and I think it's been very, very effective. So we're glad on that. We are also coming up. We're going to start the next legislative session for the state of Florida in a little bit more than a week's time. And, you're going to hear me discuss a lot of the things that you've been hearing from me over recent weeks and months, including, of course, relief for homeowners with property taxes. You're also going to hear some announcements very soon on some good news on property insurance. So stay tuned for that. And I know Blaze has been working very hard to hold some of these folks accountable as well. So you're going to see that. But I think it's just, if you look, Florida, we've done better economically than just about any other state. Certainly for GDP growth, our economy's expanded more than any other state. Maybe Idaho's more, but we're right there. We've obviously had a lot of migration of income positive people who who don't take any services but contribute to the economy, which makes our ability to do the property tax all the more better, because there's a lot of money flowing in this state. We got to give people relief. So we're going to work through that, and then some of the other issues that I know are important from law enforcement perspective. We want to make sure our corrections officers are taken care of, our highway patrol. We want to keep our momentum going on law enforcement. Want to make sure we're protecting parents and kids, especially from the AI. Some of the stuff that's happening is not good for young people, not good for families. And obviously, we don't want, this to be supplanting human decision making in different avenues of life here in Florida. So there's a whole host of issues with that. But we're going to but we'll have some good announcements this week leading up to that. And I think people will be really excited about some of the stuff that's on the agenda. So God bless everyone, and go Jags. We want to see them do well. I'm excited for everybody. Take care.
James.
Hey, yeah, let's get a date before we leave right now.
Yeah.
Can you pull up a calendar?
Yeah, my Eve's got my phone. Can I have my phone?